So hello, everybody. Welcome to this webinar from the PRCA Digital Group. It's great to have so many people online already. So we've got a jam-packed session today. So we're gonna kind of jump straight into it. We've got 10 amazing speakers from across the PR industry here in the UK, and each one is going to bring you a separate prediction for 2025. So you're going to hear 10 predictions from 10 people. Each presenter is going to try and keep it brief, keep it to less than 5 minutes. So hopefully you're going to hear lots of different perspectives, lots of different thoughts as we go through the session. Please, if you have any questions, do pop them into the chat and the speakers will hopefully get back to you with any queries you might have. But I think without any further chat, we're just going to get straight into it. And I'm going to kick things off. So I'm Danny Whatmough, Managing Director at Red Consultancy, but also a social agency that we also own called Shiny. And I really wanted to start with, I think, probably a theme that I've certainly noticed over the last sort of 6 months or so. And I think one that I predict is going to be set to continue over the next year, through this year. And that is this idea of the death of curated feeds. Now, I think we've all been in this situation where, you know, a client or a business or a brand wants to create a new Instagram account, for example, and everyone spends hours and hours and hours obsessing over what the grid is going to look like. And it is all, you know, you've seen those grids where it kind of all the individual pictures ladder up to a bigger picture, all of that kind of stuff. And to me, that really is a massive symptom of marketers talking to marketers, because actually, as we all know, you know, normal people don't view social content in quite the same way. And in these days of algorithms and AI kind of running all of these kind of platforms, the way that people are served content is very, very different. And so on the next slide, one of the things that I've really kind of seen over the last 6 months, as I say, is this idea of some brands just really starting to embrace random thinking, and one post might be totally different to the next. There might be a trend that appears that seems very, very relevant to the brand, and so they jump on that. And the next one might be more kind of product related, and it's much more of a sort of collection of kind of random pieces of communication, obviously that still all has value and relevance for the brand. But really what they're starting to do is let the AI algorithm kind of do the work. They're relying on the platform to take relevant pieces of content. Obviously, the platforms these days are much better at understanding what content is and the sorts of topics and themes that content talks about, and then making sure that that goes out to the right people, rather than you sort of feeling as though you have to sort of curate this kind of feed of content that's kind of going out on a regular basis. Duolingo is the example I've got here. I think a few other people are talking about them today as well, who obviously, if you're not following them, definitely recommend it, really kind of pushing the boundaries on some of this stuff. But a client that we work with, Currys as well, I think has done a great job of this over the last kind of year or so, really kind of embracing and trying out different sort of techniques and types of content on social. So just on the final slide, a few kind of, I guess, takeaways, if this is something that you think might be kind of interesting. Obviously, I'm not saying that you should lose elements of your brand, not saying that you should just jump on totally random things that have absolutely nothing to do with your business or your organization. So obviously staying true to brand is key. But I do think embracing this idea of testing more, trying things out. If something doesn't resonate or it doesn't quite get the traction that you expect, then that's fine. You move on to the next one, and you know, every now and again, as Duolingo and the likes of Currys have found, you will get that kind of viral piece of content that suddenly will just capture the imagination of maybe the algorithm to start with, and then consumers after that, and will give you that kind of level of social success you're looking like. So that's the first prediction I've got, the end of curation, this idea of brands experimenting much more with content, less relying on curated feeds and embracing that idea of kind of random pieces of content as a way of thinking about a content strategy moving forwards. So I will pass over now to our second speaker, the wonderful David Gallagher.
Hey, thanks, Danny. And actually, your end of curation kind of leads into my prediction, which is probably less of a prediction and maybe more just a statement of the obvious. But I thought it was worth raising, and I appreciate you and Candace and Kate giving me an opportunity just to talk a little bit about what I think is going to be the rise of a continued rise of private digital platforms. I don't know if I have it. Yeah, here we go. Private social networks. Um, I host right now two different communities. These are collections of chats on WhatsApp, and I'm a member of one on Ukraine that's on Signal. And I've been doing this for about 18 months, 2 years. I'm starting to see kind of how these work and what the potential is. And I really think that this is more for individuals. I think we as professionals are beginning to organize our own networks, our thinking, our contacts, the way we think about our place in the industry, in the field, through private social networks. And it's probably, for obvious reasons. There's a general move from kind of public forums to more private. I think post-COVID in particular, people are really craving human contact. They want real authentic opportunities to build communities, to be heard, to be seen, and they want to do it in a space that doesn't subject them to trolls or bots or abuse. So I think we're going to see this become a more prevalent use of people's time online. If I have a prediction to make, I think it's going to be that brands and companies are going to try to commercialize this. I think they're going to try to find some way to treat this as any other channel. And I would predict that they will fail. Not that people won't find some way to make money from this, but I think that goes against the ethos that holds these up. I put a picture of the advisory club. This is a community I host for people in our space. I didn't design it with any purpose in mind. It started with about 18 people. It's closer to about 900 now. People from around the world, all levels, in-house agency, many not specifically in PR, quite a few journalists, some other thinkers. And what I've observed is that people really, really, I think, value the opportunity to interact with other humans on topics that are important to them. And I think that we'll continue to find new ways to connect. Within this community, there are 21 separate chats, which makes them a little smaller and a little easier to navigate. The most popular in terms of numbers and post probably won't surprise you, but one is on AI. This is, I would argue, and I have nothing to do with the content, probably the single best source for information about AI in practice. It's a very, very lively chat. That's very topical driven. Second most popular is actually a jobs board, and it's a little UK focused right now, but I find people are extremely generous in posting what they've learned, how to get access, and what sort of jobs maybe aren't posted elsewhere. And the third is what we call the library, where people make recommendations on podcasts, books, or shows that they're watching, some related to the communication space, some not. So as a prediction, I think that we as humans are going to continue to look for ways to interact, but ways that aren't subject to the arena of X or Threads or increasingly even Blue Sky. I think we're going to want to find that to be somewhat contained. And I think we're going to continue to crave the serendipity that you get from people that are like you, but maybe you haven't actually met yet. So if you're interested in that forum, just connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to send you a link. And that's my prediction statement of the obvious. And I think it's going over to Amy now. Yeah. Hi, Amy.
Hi, David. Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Amy, Director of Digital at Hanover Communications. And my sort of prediction or my trend for 2025, similarly to David, I hope is a bit more of a statement of the obvious. It is something that is very much not new in the world of social media and digital that we all work in. So I want to talk briefly for the next few minutes about long and short form video. So the reason I wanted to focus on this is that looking back at trends for 2024, as I did a little bit of digging the last few weeks, it was really obvious that there was quite a few trends out there about long form video making a big comeback. And I think on any given day in our world of social media and digital, we see that statement made. We see the statements about short form video that are being made and who's out on top. And it all seems like a bit of a boxing match, as you can see from my wonderful AI generated image here of two types of video having a fight off. But what I really wanted to look at within this trend, therefore, was the role that both of them have. Long and short form video are both here to stay as such, or at least have a role in the sort of social media content and content production of our clients and businesses and brands. So whichever way it is, whoever's winning, video is vital to whatever is going on for brands and for businesses and for your clients this year. So I just wanted to explore some of the things there around some of the stats, but also some of the things that I predict that we'll be seeing more of. So a couple of numbers just to get everyone thinking and just to really get cemented on the importance of video. But by 2025, the prediction is that 85% of internet traffic is going to be short form video, which is quite phenomenal, really, when you think about it, just in terms of numbers. But, you know, we all know how often we're consuming short form video, even in our own day to day. So not necessarily surprising, but certainly a huge number. And a global stat, so obviously this will differ between markets and between sort of different communities, but users are supposedly spending about 33 hours a month in TikTok's video streams, which again is a lot, basically a full working week for some. So yeah, a lot to think about there. And video posts on LinkedIn are generating 40% more engagement than their other formats. And just to sort of lean into the beginning of the long versus short form prediction, the average TikTok video length in 2024 was just shy of 43 seconds. That is still short form, obviously, very important. But the only sort of trend that we saw there was that it was slightly increased from 2023. So yes, video length may be getting longer, but it's a mere seconds. So just on to the next slide. Around short form video, and sorry for all the text here, but just a few things that I wanted to call out here in terms of the trend. So short form video, ultimately, even though this does seem like a bit of a boxing match in terms of trends, it is still reigning supreme in terms of, you know, what people are consuming and what people are investing in creating. This is leaning into sort of more scientific evidence as well about our increasingly short attention spans. And if anybody came back from the Christmas break like me, the fear that it is getting shorter and shorter is very real. But all of the platforms are doing more and investing and embracing more and more short form video as part of their strategies, their algorithms, what they prioritize. Instagram itself sort of came out and confirmed that it wouldn't be pivoting to long form video as the priority. It doesn't align with their sort of goals of community building. And we are seeing more and more sort of entertainment and news companies uploading, short videos of news stories, without giving, client information away. One of the clients we were working with just shy of Christmas saw stories about them, being released on Daily Mail's TikTok, short 30-second clip of the story. So what used to be really, really sort of copyright heavy, the companies themselves are now taking that into their own hands to sort of encourage that sharing, encourage that virality, and doing so by putting things out via video on their own platform. So it's very much there, and I think this is 2025. We'll continue with this, but a few of the things we're expecting is that brands and businesses, will really double down on this and sort of push the boundaries in this sort of short form, 90 seconds or less, and ensure that they are investing a huge amount into their sort of video strategy as part of their content strategy. And some of the things that we're seeing brands and businesses play with is humor, is sort of tapping into the trends, brat, all the things that we saw last year. What will this year's be? Sounds or lack of, and how they build that into their video strategy, being reactive, and then sort of exclusive access. So various things that is being sort of predicted out there for video. And actually, the other ponder on short form for us, or for myself, has been, if TikTok does get this ban in 2025 that's being always talked about, there's lots that Meta are doing, and it's believed that they're sort of lining up to take that top spot with their sort of new video feed and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And then just a quick look at long form on the next slide. Just because obviously, whilst it may not have had the dramatic comeback that was predicted potentially in 2024, it's absolutely still got a huge place in content and in social media at the moment. And in terms of you know, the predictions for 2025, I think there's lots of things that we're already seeing that could continue. So algorithms are being adjusted, and so are the maximum video lengths, and we've sort of seen this across various different platforms, and that is sort of leaning into user behavior and allowing people to have that space to create more long form video. And there is lots of great opportunities from it. So, you know, people are seeking much more in-depth storytelling, tutorials, Q&As, all these sorts of things where long form video lends itself much more to those, and that's where there's, you know, obviously a really good place for it, and where we've seen some comeback of it, as you know, as mentioned in the last couple of years. And there is an investment in it. Sort of 35% of long form content that research has shown is sort of being created from scratch. So, you know, businesses creating episodes, interviews, whatever it might be, you know, to put out there and to sort of invest money into. And LinkedIn, obviously, with its sort of increasing investment in video and different types of content, and, you know, moving away and more into sort of social media as a platform. Again, we sort of 14.4 increase in things like live events and webinars being done and then sort of posted into the app, and people consuming that as long form content. So that's all been happening in 2024 and continues to happen into 2025. So I'm sure we'll see more and more of that. And then in terms of what we're expecting, I mean, more and more investment in things like episodic series and documentary style content that really sort of captures that audience attention and gets people to go and to consume and watch for a much longer rate. It's not just brands and businesses that are doing that. You can see MailChimp Presents here as a really good example of these huge sort of platforms that they've put together, these long form video series aimed at, you know, the entrepreneurial audience, all this sort of thing that's being invested in. But obviously, you know, everyday consumers are used to things like Chicken Shop Day and different sort of short episodes, but, you know, long form when it comes to social media video. So we're seeing a lot more of this. It's the same with video sort of essays and visual podcasts, and people leaning into sort of niche fan channels so that they can access much more in-depth and exclusive content. And then for sort of, you know, long form videos on things like LinkedIn and some of the other platforms, I think we're seeing more and more of an increase, and we'll see lots more of sort of interviews being that center stage, whether it's with, you know, business leaders, influencers, whatever it might be. That's going to be a large part of the sort of long form video strategy. So a lot going on in the world of video. I know we hear about it year on year, but I think all that tells us that it's absolutely crucial, part of your sort of client strategies, things we should be talking to clients about, and, you know, really thinking about how it becomes part of the content that you're creating every day. So I'm excited to see what more comes. And that's it from me.
Hi, everyone. I'm Neil Kleiner, Managing Director of Movement, a social-first creative agency. Like many of you, I imagine you saw the end of year kind of reports from our peers in the industry. And I think the thing that I took away was our obsession, our continued obsession with Gen Z. A hugely important and ignored demographic was largely absent from these reports. If we go to the next slide. So while we're busy kind of chasing Gen Z's fleeting attention span, the over 55s are quietly taking over. And this year, I think they're going to be impossible to ignore. We're an aging population, declining birth rates. The average 10-year-old today has a 50% chance of life expectancy of 104 if they're born in the UK. Today, older consumers control 6 trillion in assets and hold 70% of the household wealth in the UK. By 2040, they'll be driving 63p of every pound spent. This is a demographic that is reshaping consumerism. So what does this matter for social? Because older generations aren't just offline reading newspapers, you know, by candlelight with monocles. They're highly active online and increasingly present on sites like Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. Marketing and our industry is obsessed with youth, progression and newness, and capturing the next big thing. But with population aging, that single-minded Gen Z chase becomes misguided. The people with the deepest pockets and who are living longer, healthier lives are the 55 plus age bracket. And that's only going to become more pronounced, I think, this year. Go to the next slide. According to a study by Wavemaker on Device, only 4% of industry research even looks at how older users engage with media. And it gets worse. Just 24% of TV ads capture people over 50. Only 5% of influencer campaigns target them.
Over to Helen. Yeah. Hi, I'm Helen, so I'm Director of Social and Content at Burson, and my prediction for 2025 is LinkedIn, but make it TikTok. So TikTok's impact on the social media landscape, as you'll know, is pretty undeniable. We've seen a huge influence on Instagram, and I think that 2025 is going to be the year that we will really see LinkedIn transform. Creators and brands are starting to adopt those kind of formats that were born on TikTok. So things like street interviews here, but they're also reimagining what might be a traditional LinkedIn content theme. So something like professional advice, but with that more authentic and people first approach, like that one in the middle that maybe has stopped playing. And then this one on the right is an influencer called Piper Phillips. Her account is really interesting because she shares her experience as a content creator as her profession. So it gives that real kind of behind the scenes look at her as an influencer, at her brand deals. So she goes through, like on this one with Dyson, how that happened. And she's also working directly with LinkedIn because her content really embodies the type of direction that they are heading in as a platform. So you're most likely seeing a lot more content like this suggested in your feed, and that's because TikTok's For You page has influenced content delivery algorithms. So LinkedIn's feed now prioritizes much broader content discovery. It shows you more posts from those beyond your network, whereas previously it would have just been those you follow or are connected with. And that means that the viral potential of content is starting to become much more important than perhaps how many followers you have. So again, similarly to how that works on TikTok. On the next slide, I've got a campaign to share from Hootsuite, which is a really perfect example of the new LinkedIn. So they've recognized the power of individual content, that content from individuals gets a higher reach than those from company pages, and also that opportunity with video, which Amy talked to as well. And what they did was they brought in influencers, therefore, to promote their social media trends report. Hopefully you saw this because it flooded the feeds of social media managers who follow those voices for their expertise. And I love this because you can see how that kind of arresting visual also really stands out in your feed of kind of static quote cards. And they've cleverly tied that into LinkedIn also as a place for news. So ultimately, it's a lead gen campaign, but they've got a really clear KPI there of the audience downloading the report to show success. So if you flick on Kate, what's next for LinkedIn in 2025? It's going to be people first content all the way. Vertical video will dominate. That's what the algorithm will prioritize. LinkedIn influencers are really key. So the platform is betting really big on creators. They're sharing stats like 80% of B2B buyers prefer influencer content over branded messaging. So B2B brands need an influencer strategy. And as I mentioned, LinkedIn is also becoming a news source. So news post views are up 20% year on year. And in the US, outlets are starting to reference LinkedIn as a news source in a similar way that maybe that would have been done in the past with Twitter. So given that uncertainty surrounding X, LinkedIn is kind of perfectly placed to swoop into that spot. That's it from me.
Hi everyone, I'm Steve. I'm MD of Influencer and Social at Stripe Communications. Now, really, I should know better than making predictions given the fickleness of social media, but I am going to go with it's going to be a really big year for hyper-specific creators. So in terms of definition, what I kind of really mean by that is those influencers that have built up a dedicated audience by focusing really on a sort of single niche or theme. And one of the big reasons that this is becoming a bigger thing and kind of exploding in many ways is because there's been a shift from the kind of social graph to the interest graph. And we've touched on that a little bit before in some of the previous trends, but the key reason for that is historically, Meta's main feed would look at your connections, the accounts you follow, and surface content that way. Whereas if you look at the AI algorithms and TikTok and Meta in terms of Reels, they don't really care so much about, who you are and who you follow, What they really pay attention to is what you're interested in over and above that traditional demographic data. So if you think about yourself, you know, it could be like gaming on one hand, and then very quickly, you know, if you've got a hobby like knitting, and then it could be a very functional thing like fixing something in your household. So there really is a kind of myriad of things people are interested in, and that's what we're really going into now. So you're just served content based on your interests, what your preferences are, and then the activity you actually do on that individual platform. And a really good example of a super niche creator is Cucumber Guy, otherwise known as Logan Moffat. Now, he's built up a huge audience off the back of whole cucumber recipes. And they became so popular kind of middle of last year, they caused vegetable shortages in supermarkets, and I know they had the same impact in my family fridge at home when my daughter got hold of them. But something really interesting started to happen. I mean, Cucumber Guy collaborated with a really wide, you know, range of brands last year, and it started with the quite obvious stuff. So, you know, food suppliers, cucumber growers, Bloom, Chipotle were sending him sort of boxes of cucumbers and health drinks just to sort of pair with his recipe. Then it just started to get a lot more interesting, in my view, as brands became a little bit more creative. So Sephora matched their cucumber eye patches with the cucumber recipes and had a really kind of a campaign that performed really well. K18 hair mask that takes 4 minutes to activate, and that was the same length as one of his whole cucumber recipes, the same length to make. So they kind of found a connection that way. And then if you look at NYX Cosmetics, they had an eyeshadow palette that matched the color of a particular onion salad that he produced a recipe on to go with his cucumber. And they really, you know, you could say some of it's stretching it a bit, or you could say brands are being really creative and moving quickly and finding the relevance with the audience. And if you look at some of the results with NYX, 40 million views on TikTok alone, you know, that is pretty impressive. And then just to wrap things up, if you're looking at your influencer plans this year, looking how you kind of maximize your time on it, it's going to share a couple of ways that you can get involved. So first of all, I just urge you to really spend some time finding your shared niche. You do have a license to be involved in those conversations. So, you know, I would really kind of focus on that and be really kind of purposeful. But rather than trying to emulate your competitors, you know, really try and focus on being really distinctive. So saying, doing and sharing things only you can do that really tie into your brand or your product or your kind of services. And then I would say once you've got that nailed, you know, be really open in the way you work with creators. Like, they know their audiences best, they know what will fly, they've tried, they've tested. So really try and work them as a sort of ideation partner. I think you'll get a lot better results. And then if you've kind of got all that worked out, I would go all in. Like don't do it half-heartedly. If you're going to do it, really commit and really kind of see how you can get your sort of maximize value from that. And I've just shared one example on the right from Belroy, which is Australian carry goods brand. So they make bags and wallets, and they create content that really ties back to how they've designed the products, that really shines a light on their USPs. So they have a series called Will It Fit?, where they actually take a kind of a bag or a wallet and they go through the different kind of tech or makeup or objects and how they fit in the bag. And think of that as a shopper. That's the sort of stuff you really want to know. They do it in a really socially native way, often working with creators. It's shot on the phone, it's simple to execute, and it's really easy for them to repeat. So it's efficient to do as a brand, as an ongoing series. So that's it for me, but I am looking forward to seeing more left field, counterintuitive partnerships for the rest of 2025.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, so if I move on quickly to my next slide, I'm Lou Watson. something counterintuitive. I'm going to talk about misinformation, disinformation, and how in 2025, this is the year that we really need to prize truth and fight back. Mis and disinformation is neither new nor solely a social media phenomenon. So why am I talking about it as a trend here and now? I think the point I'm going to make is that this year we're going to face some particular challenges which are going to cause us to really think hard about the price that we've had to pay for all the social media fun that we've been having, whether that's entertainment, division, fast takes, hot takes. I think in the context that we're going into in 2025, truth has been the price that has often fallen at the wayside for that. And we've kind of played lip service to the importance of mis and disinformation as a bad thing, but actually haven't actively done as much as we can do or should be doing. So 2025, my argument is the fight back, and we need to have a call to arms to actually use our comms power to make a difference. Moving on to the next slide, I guess we have operated last year in a particularly volatile world. I have no understanding as to how that is possibly going to change going into 2025. I think the one thing that you could take as a kind of very small silver lining out of all of this is that the weaponization of truth and the rise of information warfare has come out of the shadows and has become a lot more explicit and a lot more front of mind for a lot of people. Interestingly, just at the end of last year, Sweden put out a piece of non-social media comms to all of its population titled "If Crisis or War Comes." And within that, for the first time, I believe there was a double-page spread on information warfare and the rise of propaganda and how to avoid being subjected to the conflicts that it presents. Sweden is not alone. You're seeing activity similar from Finland and from Germany and other markets. Across the Atlantic, President Trump, or President-elect Trump, has been very vocal in his plans ahead of coming into term around the measures that he's going to put on place around going against press freedoms and freedom of information. We saw yesterday, or day before yesterday, Mark Zuckerberg coming out as a kind of as a fluffer for this talk, where he talked about the rollback in terms of content moderation that's in place and how Facebook Meta are looking to follow the lead of X previously, and we've seen X with its link suppression. So I think it's comes that time where we have to really make the call and say, at what price are we enjoying the social media world, and how does this inform our purpose and the things that we're looking to do? So if we move on to the next slide in terms of conclusion, I guess what I'd say is as a group of communications professionals, know that we have power and that we can use that power in a variety of ways. So I guess my call to arms would be threefold. Number one, for you individually, act slowly. I'd love to see 2025 as the end of the hot take, or wading in without considered kind of thought and discussion around some of these kind of highly nuanced topics, but actually stop, verify, consider before you actually engage. Thinking about your organizations and your clients, choose carefully, bring into board a broad church of opinions, including those that might be counter to yours, and seek to understand before seeking to be understood. I think the whole kind of move to, that we've seen in terms of move to blue sky and people going, oh, isn't this a lovely place? Let's continue to broaden alliances and actually actively seek opinions from those that might disagree with us. And then finally, join voraciously. We're going to see a year where if some of the plans that have been put in place or have been talked about come to effect, you're going to have academics, individuals, think tanks that are really working at the forefront of materials, having their information suppressed, or in some cases of investigative journalism, actively being told that they're treasonous and that there's mitigations against misleading or alternative truths. So if you see people and recognize that there are a number of parties who are acting in this space to protect the virtue of truth, join voraciously. You have the power, you have the skills. If you see disinformation, misinformation at play, call it out, support those that help and need it. And if you think about it in terms of war metaphors, I guess in the great information war of 2025, the next generation says to you, what did you do be able to say that you played your part. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Matlock. I am the EMEA Managing Director of Distillery and Independent Creative Practice. And I guess I kind of wanted to start off with a little bit of context from a personal and professional standpoint about where my prediction is coming from. Having spent around 15 years in PR agencies like Ketchum and BCW, I have recently come out of a contract at an FMCG brand where I was very deep in the world of consumer social, and now returning back into the world of agency where a majority of our clients are actually B2B. I've spent the last couple of months really having to SWAT up on it. And the lovely thing about kind of coming in toward the end of the predictions is I've actually already seen a lot of what I was going to predict coming through and coming through from some of the other speakers. So yeah, pulling all those reports kind of into one place, I would say my prediction is that B2B social is going to look a heck of a lot more like B2C. And so I would also say, you know, this is a major simplification of kind of a lot of those reports. But like many things in social, as we've seen, a lot of things come back around again. And this may not be new to a seasoned practitioner. There are a lot of things that we've been talking about, though, for a long time, especially not just in B2C, but in B2B as well, and advising our clients. And we know it just takes a really long time for change to come about and for those companies to really transform, put the budgets there, get the right people, resources, and to prioritize social. And I think maybe this year might be where we're going to start seeing that shift. And there are a few different drivers of this. I think we're seeing the diversification in our budget owners, that the content briefs that we're getting into the agencies may not just be comms and PR led, that they might be product or customer marketing teams. It could be the distributors or even heads of sales. And I think with that is really interesting because what they're asking for and where those are coming from. And some of this is also due to the comms headcount. Unfortunately, as we know, we are seeing many of our clients and even our own teammates being made redundant. And so that shift of budget owners within those organizations means that it's a slightly different ask. And also the KPIs are shifting. It's less about brand awareness and media headlines or even engagement rates. It's really about impacting that bottom line, those leads and those conversions. We're also seeing a generational shift into who the decision makers are. We have very digitally native buyers now coming along and early adopters in terms of social digital, and they're using social as part of that decision-making research. So businesses now have to be ready to answer those questions, wherever it may be, TikTok, YouTube, etc. And the point on generational digital buyers is also where algorithms come in. And we've already touched on this today. So really, it's about serving interest-based content. And we are all, let's face it, we're human. So are our buyers. So are, you know, so you have to think about when they're sitting around and enjoying social media in their downtime, they're not necessarily looking to be sold to, but they are looking for good content. They're things that are going to match their interests. And we do see personal and professional obviously blur that line within social. So they want to see that mirror, the B2B social kind of mirroring that same B2C journey, and making that content that is getting pushed into their feed has to be almost stealthy. It has to look like what, you know, they're interested in, less branded, less polished, more snackable and scrappy. And finally, and this has also just been sort of touched on, you know, B2B is really about relationships and that one-to-one, especially across big ticket items, and people buy people. And so trust is still, you know, a huge thing, and that social visibility in terms of thought leadership, influencers, and just having that engagement. So I think we're going to see a lot of this coming through in briefs. And I would say in some ways, maybe these briefs aren't new. It's just different is that a lot of times I think as practitioners, we can advise on what is really great and what we want to be seeing, and just internally, our clients' businesses just aren't set up yet or weren't set up yet to really actually implement that. And so I think, like I said, this is going to be a bigger year where I think they've had time to get ready, and they're here, and they need to like jump on it. So coming back to those kind of points, so maybe where those briefs are, and again, just touching the surface here, is, you know, like I said, how are you going to be answering for search? So you're seeing a rise even in search in the beginning of the year on customers looking for content marketing packages. So we need to think about how would we be packaging up content for those clients to make sure that they are being able to touch across search on multiple platforms and really sweat those assets, because they can no longer rely on that one customer reference or case study to do the job, and then test and optimize from there. Social first was just kind of talked on as well. And it's that content that really is hyper-personalized, interest-based, and using those KOLs or influencers to get that content in front of that buyer, and really speaks to that niche. So thanks, Steve, for that point. And then employee enablement. Again, even coming back to the LinkedIn formats, and with both what Amy and Helen have said, train your employees to be those ambassadors, enable them to stand up, to have that voice, to make those connections, building that presence and trust. And so I think we're going to see a lot more B2B influencer programs being asked for this year. So those are my predictions. B2B is going to mirror B2C, and we are excited for it. Over to Candace.
Thank you so much. And hi, everyone. I am a recovering Twitterholic, and frankly, these days, my own personal social media use focuses around the mudlarking community. And I really echo what David and Steve both mentioned, is that niche communities of like-minded people is what's bringing value. And it's kind of reminding us what the whole, I guess the magic of the internet actually is to bring peer-to-peer sharing and a place for us to share what's really important to us. But when I first came to the beautiful city of London, it was as a creative director for Ogilvy. And being in the creative department there, it was really clear that mascots were not cool. And if you wanted to actually put one of them into a concept, you'd probably get fired. But I think that was silly. That was wrong. And as we saw from Danny, Duolingo is absolutely killing it. And their mascot, Duo the Owl, is really a poster child for a fully owned asset, being your brand ambassador, being your content creator, dare I say it, influencer, better than any paid Instagram star might be. So my prediction is really, I think more marketing teams, more PR teams, more creative teams will catch on that a non-human brand ambassador might be the perfect thing that you need for your brand. Now, my personal obsession is Ellie. So meet Ellie the elephant. And if you're not following the WNBA, which maybe you're not, they are having quite a year. The WNBA, the Women's Basketball League in America, has been named the fastest growing brand for 2024. So women's sports in general has really exploded. You just saw Ellie on the Stephen Colbert show. She's the mascot for the champion New York Liberty team, and she has really transcended the way that sports mascots are perceived or how they engage, because typically they're just kind of cuddly clowns. But Ellie is sassy, she's stylish, she's exuberant. She is the opposite of AI. So she has been created, and this is also an interesting, the New York Liberty has fantastic marketing power. They are led by 3 Black women executives who came up with the idea of Ellie. And if you you've got to Google her, because she's unbelievably entertaining. But the backstory for her is the Brooklyn Bridge, when it was first created, people were a little scared that it wasn't strong enough. So P.T. Barnum, the circus impresario, he marched 21 elephants across the bridge to prove it was safe. So when the New York Liberty moved to their new home in Brooklyn, they launched Ellie the elephant as their mascot. And she has become a pop culture phenomenon. She has brand deals, she has her own stylists, she hangs out with celebrities, she performs with the star rappers that come to the arena, and she is a PR machine year-round. And of course, sports is seasonal. So when the Liberty are not playing, as they're not playing right now, Ellie's still out there. She's in the Glamour Women of the Year event. She's in Elle magazine. She's in Vogue magazine. So she's also bringing the New York Liberty brand into places where they're not typically covered, into all sorts of lifestyle media. And of course, as she is a giant TikTok star, she is a magnet for user-generated content. So I think the ultimate goal of lots and lots of brands is to have, as others have said, we want to be talked about. We want users to actually amplify our content, make their own content about our brand, about our service. And this beautiful creature. And there is a real person inside Ellie. She's a dancer. She's an athlete. She is a single individual, people. It's not, they don't swap out other humans inside that costume. But she interacts, and everyone in that arena wants to get content and post it on their own channels. So all you have to do is Google her, go on TikTok or Instagram, and see how much love for her, but what an incredible brand asset. And so she is my prediction that a lot of other companies and brands, not just in sports, but in different industries, will learn from this and find a way for owned assets, owned ambassadors, and have something that they're bringing to their user base that isn't just a paid ambassador that they're just giving money to promote them. So do follow Big Ellie Liberty on all the socials. And one, we did have Lou touch on this, but we couldn't not include the news from Meta, which I must say, if we are talking about predictions, I wouldn't have predicted it, but that's probably my bad because it was very predictable. The signs were all there. So the radicalization of moderation just frankly blows my mind because it's just so illogical. But I think it's become collateral damage in the right-wing war on common sense. But to the positive side, my prediction, and we heard this also from David, we are in a place where more and more people are going to find less toxic, little maybe niche communities, invent their own communities, build things that are not dependent on these giant platforms when they become more toxic. We can find ways to communicate and share that don't rely and are not invaded by all the hate speech and negativity. So that is what I would predict. And I think that we'll see companies, we've already seen publications like The Guardian and Provoke Media, who were part of the exodus and are now posting on Blue Sky rather than on the dreaded X. But I think we'll see more individuals make those moral choices. Where do you want your eyeballs to go, and who do you want to benefit from your own content that you might be posting and sharing? So I'll be sharing Ellie content if you want to follow me, but we have a couple of questions. We have a little more time, so I want to thank everyone because it was a fantastic array of different topics and speakers. So we have a question about non-human brand ambassadors. Why did they have the edge that AI personalities didn't have? I think that is like a hard question because creativity, which we all know when we see it, but is incredibly kind of hard to make something that's so engaging. And they just did a brilliant thing. They invented Ellie, and they decided on a full personality, a well-rounded personality, and she represents the culture of Brooklyn. So she's very authentic to that team, to that location, to that sport. And actually, there's a answer in the chat as well. I don't know if Neil has come back online. I don't see him. But yes, we were having a great bit with his, no, he's not back on.
Carrie, I think he might have been trying to use the same link, and I'm not sure if he was able to get back in.
Apologies for that, everyone. And if you reach out to Neil on LinkedIn, he might share a post there. I don't know, but it's very possible. So we are so happy that you joined us today. This is one of my favorite events because we do get such a wide variety of speakers, and I thank them all from the bottom of my heart. We will be doing this hopefully in a year, or maybe we should do this more often because of the speed in which we all know digital happens. I am really thankful, of course, to the PRCA for hosting this and for inviting everyone to join.
Candace, sorry, there was one question in the Q&A. Did you see Sarah Nadif's question about the rise of AI influencers? And sorry if I missed that you did answer that.
Oh, okay. Sarah, well, I don't think very highly of it. I see it happening. I think a lot of people are enamored of the technology and they don't see the end product as with an unbiased mind. I stopped myself from amplifying it because I was so horrified, but there was a post on LinkedIn from some AI company, and they invented what they were claiming was going to be a real estate ambassador, and she was built completely from AI, but she looked like a 19-year-old blue-eyed blonde model. And it made no sense that this was what they were creating. So there is that giant stereotype overlay to how especially women are projected when created by AI technology. So I find it horrifying in the wrong hands. And as we know, lots of wrong hands are out there. But that's me. I prefer Ellie. She's very human and very sassy. But we'll see what happens. Any last words from any other panelist?
All good. Just thank you everyone for joining. Really appreciate your time that you spent your lunch with us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
See you in real life sometime soon.
Bye.
Take care.